Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining. Before we get started, please remember to take a minute to become a subscriber on Substack and Patreon. You will find more content there, and I have several really exciting projects that I will be launching there later this month, and I certainly hope to see you there. While much of Europe was holding its breath ahead of Donald Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, something far more revealing had already happened there. It came from Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, which is the largest asset manager on the planet. Larry Fink openly admitted that the system, the capitalist system that Davos represents, is facing a crisis of legitimacy. Now, of course, many of us knew this all along. This was not really a surprise, but it was still quite shocking, I would say, to hear that from BlackRock. You will find his full speech on my Telegram and my X, so I will not be including it here in this video. Also, even though his words are shocking, I do want to say that let's not get fooled. Admitting the obvious is part of the game.
Many of the people most affected by what we talk about here will never come to this conference. That's the central tension of this forum. Davos is an elite gathering trying to shape a world that belongs to everyone. That is why this year's theme is the spirit of dialogue, because dialogue is the only way a room like this can earn the legitimacy to shape ideas for people who aren't in the room.
The single word, legitimacy, actually matters more than any market forecast or policy pledge. Fink wasn't talking about a temporary downturn or a cyclical slowdown, of course. He was talking about a deeper problem, which is people no longer believe in the story that has justified modern capitalism for decades. And according to Fink himself, the decisive stress test for that system will be artificial intelligence. And this is where it gets interesting. According to Fink, if AI does to white-collar jobs what globalization once did to blue-collar jobs, to blue-collar labor, society will be forced to confront the consequences directly. This wasn't framed as a hypothetical risk somewhere in the distant future, by the way. It was framed as an approaching reality. Fink went actually further, saying that Davos must stop lecturing the world and start listening to voices that it has historically ignored. It sounds great, right? But again, this is a hook to get you to start believing them again. Then, of course, came the most telling admission of all. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, more wealth, he said, has become created than in all of previous human history. And most of it has gone to the people who attend Davos. Well, clearly, that wasn't a confession born out of guilt. It was a strategic acknowledgement of a problem that can no longer be ignored. Larry Fink did not suddenly discover empathy. No, he didn't. He didn't have a moral awakening, let's be clear, and he didn't all of a sudden become a champion of social justice. His speech was not about fairness. It was about survival, and more specifically, the survival of a global managerial and financial elite whose authority is no longer accepted as self-evident. What Fink articulated here, very carefully I would say, is something that has been understood behind closed doors for years, probably even decades. The old model of capitalism has stopped producing public consent. You see where I'm going here, right? Now that the top 1% knows that the public does not trust them, the rules of the game must be changed, and they're changing. For decades, elites defended the system with macroeconomic numbers, such as GDP growth, market capitalization, stock indices. But the message was very simple. The economy is growing, therefore everyone will eventually benefit. Well, that argument no longer works. It has been proven wrong. Growth still exists, sure, but its rewards are increasingly concentrated. You work very hard your entire life and you barely make ends meet. For large parts of society, economic success has become something they read about, they hear about, not really something that they experience. And Fink, perhaps more clearly than any Davos regular before him, admitted that macro statistics have lost their persuasive power. They no longer create belief. People just don't trust them anymore. This is why elites are now searching for a new language. Not the language of indices and balance sheets, which nobody really cares about or understands, but the language of tangible well-being, such as stability, predictability, the sense that tomorrow will not be worse than today. Well, these are emotional and psychological needs. We all have them. At the same time, Fink was remarkably explicit about where the next wave of inequality will come from, and I find that really fascinating. In the AI-driven economy, the primary winners will not be workers or consumers, but the owners of models, the owners of data, and the owners of computational infrastructure. If the old era of globalization was about relocating factories and relocating infrastructure and extracting rents from cheap labor, the new era is about extracting rents from computation itself and from control over the digital choke points that make AI possible. This matters because AI, by its very nature, is even more prone to monopolization than industrial capitalism. Scale matters more. Data accumulates advantages faster. Infrastructure becomes harder to replicate. Once dominance is established here, it is extremely difficult to challenge it, maybe even impossible. And let's not fool ourselves. Fink is not warning about this because he wants to dismantle it. He is warning about this because unmanaged inequality threatens the legitimacy of the entire system. When someone at the very top starts talking this way, this is a signal that discontent is no longer being dismissed as temporary noise. It is being recognized as a permanent feature of the new landscape, something to be managed, not eliminated. So this is Larry Fink's attempt, his first shot at managing it, perhaps preemptively. This is the key shift. Global capitalism is not preparing to reform itself out of moral concern. It is preparing to adapt out of self-preservation. And yet, even that adaptation may not be enough. In other words, the very AI-driven future that Fink sees as the next phase of capitalism may not evolve under Western control at all. And this is where I think all of us need to start paying attention. Due to China's technological advances and the rise of the global South, the tables may turn. Larry Fink's speech was not a warning to workers, of course. It was a warning to elites. The age of defending capitalism with charts and aggregate numbers, that age is over, he's saying. The elites know that nobody takes them seriously anymore. The AI revolution is not just a technological shift. It is a legitimacy test. And the outcome will determine not only who controls the future economy, but who society is willing to trust to lead that economy. Based on my understanding of Larry Fink's words, his message, the real question is no longer whether artificial intelligence will transform the world. That is already happening, and we all understand that. The real question here is, who will shape the transformation and who will be forced to live with the consequences? Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this quick update. This is a bit of a different video than my typical content, so I certainly hope that you found it interesting. Support my work. I appreciate every single one of you who has become a paid subscriber on Patreon, Substack, and YouTube. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in my new video tomorrow. Bye for now.